You're listening to the Forging Bio podcast, a show that illuminates invention, not in some distant laboratory, but in the very fabric of our everyday lives. We're sitting down with innovators in biotechnology and biomanufacturing to talk about how microbes and molecules are making the future of industry. We'll hear incredible stories of inspiration, revolutionary ideas, and approaches to creating ingredients for food, beverage, nutrition, pharmaceuticals, beauty, agriculture, materials, and more, all shaping the future of health, wellness, and prosperity. Hello, I'm your host, Casey Lippmeier, Senior Vice President of Innovation for Conagen. Today we're speaking with Sergio Borbolla from Sweegen LATAM to talk about how new sweetener technologies can transform their prepackaged food and beverage landscape and pique the interest of consumers looking for better tasting, reduced sugar products. Hi, Sergio. Could you tell me a little bit about yourself and your role at Sweegen LATAM?
Hello, Casey, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here. My role at Sweegen is Director of Business Development for Latin America, so I get to lead the commercial efforts in the region, as well as working closely with our R&D team and make sure that we develop very interesting beverage and food demos and prototypes, highlighting our technologies for consumers and potential customers. I have the opportunity to offer many different tools that Sweegen has developed and make sure that products can be healthier out there in the market. Our innovation studio is located in Mexico City. And also, I'm in charge of being able to raise awareness about what we can do for our customers in the region.
Okay, that's interesting. You just used the word innovation studio. That's a little unfamiliar to me. Could you tell me a little bit more about what an innovation studio is and what you do there?
Absolutely. We call it Innovation Studio, and it's a co-creation center for our customers. What we basically do is that we bring our customers here. We work hand in hand with them. They can bring a sample base for us to do the bench work. And in one very same day, the customer can leave after the afternoon with a prototype that works with our solutions. And we can help them in many ways. For example, we can help them reducing sugar. We can also help them optimize taste of what they want to do with the product. By optimizing taste is what I mean is being able to maintain a very tasty product without sacrificing flavor, which is very important. And also clients can have a healthier alternative of the current product that they have in the market.
Interesting. So it really, to me, you're painting a picture of an actual studio. And you had mentioned that it's important for reducing sugar, and that's very important for health reasons. But I think most people know, of course, that if it doesn't taste good, it's not going to be helpful. People aren't going to buy it, and it's not going to sell. So an innovation studio that actually helps customers in an active way create demonstration products that taste good, I think that's pretty cool. That sounds like a lot of fun. I'm sure you've got a lot of fun in your job.
Oh yeah, a lot of fun, because we also get to taste the different products that we develop. The Innovation Studio also has the objective of being very close with our customers and have very quickly turnaround times to respond them and also serve to their needs. And by their needs, I mean for them to have a sample on a faster way, for them to really taste what our solutions taste like, because you cannot convince the customer of what we're selling, but when they taste it here, since we have a fully equipped lab, we can make many different applications, whether it's dairy, a soft drink, a bakery product, confectionery. We get to see their faces. When they try the sample, the reaction is immediate, so we know when they like it, which is also very, very helpful because we can assess and we can be certain that they like our solution.
That's really neat. So tell me a little bit more about what challenges consumers might be struggling with in Mexico when it comes to packaged products.
Well, first of all, I think it's a very tough situation for the consumer at this point. There is a sugar reduction topic in the top of mind of consumers, specifically consumers willing to prioritize their health and wellness. And the ones that are more conscious about the labeling. A good number of consumers have expressed to us their interest of decreasing the sugar intake, apart from salt and fat, of course, but sugar happens to be the main struggle of the consumer. Also because there are not so many healthier options of packaged products out there in the market. Even though we're a country that we have many raw and natural products that we can eat fresh, but there is not so much time for doing that because that requires preparation. So when it comes to prepackaged food, the consumer is really struggling. So for the ones looking for options out there on the shelves, the reality is that there are not so many products available.
Right. Paint a picture for me. Let's say I'm a Mexican consumer, and I'm walking through the grocery store. I see different products that have different labels on them. What kind of information am I struggling with when I'm looking at these different kinds of labels?
That's a very interesting approach. Okay, see, actually, I also want to mention that we did a study on consumer perception about the products on the market, and see what they have to say about the labeling. So if you go to the supermarket, which actually we did an on-site study at the supermarket and also a shop along with them, and also visiting their homes. So when you go to the supermarket, you get to see the vast majority of the products have the new labeling regulation, and the products have the labels on top of the packaging. Okay. These labels are very evident and very clear.
I've heard them called front of package labels. Is that accurate?
That is correct. It's a front of package labels. This was developed by the Pan American Health Organization, basically as an informational tool for the consumers to be aware what is it that they're buying. This organization and health authorities in Mexico, they want the consumer to be informed so they can have a more guided purchasing decision, so to speak.
Okay, so you did a study to really understand consumer behavior, specifically as prompted by some of these front of package labels, as you called them, and you specifically had a term in there. You called it a shop along. So, I mean, does that literally mean that you had people go with consumers, with them to the grocery store to see what their purchasing habits were?
Absolutely, it was very interesting and very insightful because we told them just let us be with you during the shop along. We won't interfere with what you need to buy. Just do your regular supermarket purchase like you do every week or every other day. And they would choose the product that they wanted. And at the end of the purchasing, we did just ask them, why did you buy this product? Do you know if there's any other option besides this one? Do you know if the product has labels or not? To our surprise, many consumers said, I didn't realize about the labels. Some others did read the list of ingredients, and some others, like in between, they know the labels are there, but they may not pay attention to them as much as we would expect. The labeling regulation has been in place since October 2020.
Okay. So yeah, I think I heard you say that there were two parts of the study as well, that you had this shop along and then there was a second follow-up. Could you explain just maybe how this overall study was structured?
Absolutely. This qualitative section, which included the shop along, also included going to their houses. And then they would be able to answer a more in-depth questionnaire of different questions to see if what they were saying was truly what was happening at home. So also to our surprise, when they said that they would prefer not to buy a product with the labels, they bought it. And then when we asked them if they were consuming at home for the whole family or just for one specific person, trying to match that with the reality. When we opened the pantry, we saw many different inconsistencies. Some of them would say, no, I prefer not to have soft drinks, for example. Then we would open the fridge and we saw a huge bottle of soft drink.
How embarrassing.
It was a little bit funny.
Yes. Yeah, this is perhaps not too unexpected. I know that, when you do an online survey with, a broad group of people, you can hit a lot more people. But I think people are going to answer those. I know I certainly do. People are going to answer those based on who they want to be as opposed to who they actually are and what they're actually doing, right? So you completely obviated that by actually having people go along shopping with them, actually going into the house and seeing that they were actually doing things that were what they were saying they were doing, or maybe not in certain cases. It's really interesting. I think it points to an overall strength of the study that you did and gives people maybe more confidence in the conclusions that you can draw from it. So with that said, could you tell me a little bit more about some of the conclusions that you drew from this study about consumer behavior? You had said that they weren't as aware of some of the labels, but of the people that were, how did that influence their decisions?
Sure. And like you said, the moment of truth is different from when they say something previously. So a few things about the study is that consumers seem to think that they can control their portions, and that will make them feel healthier. Mm-hmm. Of course, this is very hard to measure because when they say portions, they might say a plate, or they might say just a little bit, just a bit of this product. And that's the way they think they can moderate their sugar intake without necessarily being the proper exercise to do. They also claim to do exercise many times a week. Also hard to measure because that also depends on how much exercise you do, the type of exercise you do. It's very difficult to measure. And also the study showed us like dual situations. It's really hard to find a balance for people wanting to be healthier when there are many occasions where consumer has access to indulgent products. So we come from a country full of celebrations. Even the weekend is a celebration after a hard work week. So in those occasions, we also come from a culture which is not wasteful. We want to not throw food to the garbage. And also the study was very clear about those opinions. The intentions didn't match the reality. So I would say the portion control, the exercise, and apparently they also said that they wouldn't buy the product and that they would look for an option. That was also something that the study showed, but also really hard to measure sometimes.
Right. That's interesting. So I actually have some bullet points from the study in front of me here, and I'm just going to read off some of the findings and get maybe your interpretation, if you don't mind. So 56% of those that were in the survey felt that they had control over their habits by reducing their caloric intake. I'm actually surprised that it wasn't higher than 56%. I mean, 56% makes sense to me, but I mean, it seems obvious. So why do you think it was at that number?
I would say it's just mere perception that the control of the portions, it's something that people do really care about, can do. I would have expected also that the percentage to be higher, but I would say that this group of people are the ones that really take care of the decisions at home when preparing food and when doing the purchases. That's why I would say that they try to say that they can control the portions, even though it's not necessarily the case.
I see. 44% believed that by increasing their physical activity, they have more control over their health habits. I don't know if that's in opposition to their caloric intake, but that was interesting to me as well, too. And it's notable that it's a lower number than the 56% related to the control through caloric intake. Any comment on that? I mean, that one I think I could probably guess myself.
Yeah, I would say that even that percentage is a little bit low compared to the ones that really said that the exercise was important. And also because some of that information was reinforced with a quantitative study, and consumers were also allowed to respond by themselves. So this interview or this questionnaire was done that way, and maybe that percentage is a little bit lower than people who say that they do exercise.
Right. And then the big one from this, and the last one that I'll mention, and I think for Sweegen, this is probably the most impactful finding. 68% believed that by reducing their sugar intake, they can control their health. And that's higher than just the caloric intake. So it's focusing on sugar specifically. That's high to me. That seemed interesting.
It seems to be very high and also very good news to us, because that would mean we could offer more solutions for the customers to provide with healthy alternatives to that.
So let me just be clear, and to restate it simply, you just said that there's a label in Mexico that doesn't actually differentiate between different kinds of non-sugar sweeteners, between artificial and natural sweeteners. Is that correct?
Well, yes, that's correct. And just to clarify, the sugars are measured with a specific label if the product has an excess on it, which is an octagon. And on the other hand, you have the high-intensity sweeteners, which could be either artificial one or natural ones.
In your own words, how do you think that the impact of artificial versus natural sweeteners plays out in Mexico? I mean, how important is it for the consumer to know the difference?
I think it's creating a lot of impact, a negative impact, because consumers could benefit from the natural options versus the artificials. The study also showed us that consumers would prefer to have a natural options of sweeteners versus the artificials. So I think having lumped the sweeteners in the same category is not going to help. Also because the perception towards this legend of sweeteners not recommended for children will also allow parents to go for different options that could actually be full sugar version of the product.
So let me just ask that obvious follow-up question. Why are sweeteners not recommended for children in Mexico?
Well, I want to clarify, first of all, that artificial ones are not highly recommended, not only for children, but for the whole population, based on different scientific studies that have proven that those may not be suitable for children specifically. The natural ones can be used for children, but the norm here, there's one specific point that the labeling regulation did include, is that they don't want infants to get used to the sweet flavor, because the sweet flavor itself may cause them a sort of addiction or cravings for sugar problems, for sugar products.
Right. And that's interesting. I mean, I guess I can understand where some of that rationale might come from, but at the same time, there's a lot of natural sources of sweetness out there, fruits and certain vegetables, etc. What's the overall perception of sweeteners in Latin America? What are the different rankings of different options, and how much does the consumer know the difference?
The study also shed some light on what's the perception of sweeteners. Honey, for example, has a very good perception, specifically in Mexico, because honey has like a medicine type of prevention.
Right. I heard that honey also helps prevent allergies to a certain degree to pollen. Maybe, I don't know if that's true, but I've heard that.
It could be true, and I think the perception is very positive towards honey. Interesting also to mention that stevia didn't have a bad perception itself as a sweetener for the ones that know that it's natural. But the thing is that a lot of people think that stevia is artificial. And just to be very clear, stevia is 100% natural.
Yeah, it's the name. Stevia is the name of the actual plant, right?
That's correct. Stevia comes from a plant, and we extract that from the plant. So in the end, the product is 100% natural.
Right. And stevia sweeteners, being natural, are considered, again, by the results of this study, to be better for you than the artificial ones, or at least less harmful? Or, I mean, what's the status there?
The perception is that they are better than the artificial ones. Okay. But there's still a lot of confusion. So some consumers don't know the difference between one and the others.
So that's really interesting. I've got in front of me a few more bullets from the study that you had provided earlier. And one of the things that jumped out to me around the perceptions of sweeteners in Mexico is that 20% believed that these sweeteners have something to do with dyes or natural food colors. That surprised me. What does that mean?
It's really strange. It also came to a really surprise to us as well, because the word edulcorante in Spanish means sweetener.
Okay.
But if you split the word, and also because people don't spell it correctly, or don't pronounce it correctly, edulcorante, when you spell it, colorante is the word for color, which they confuse with corante, which doesn't have to do anything with it.
I see. Okay.
People would say edulcorante, which could sound like a coloring agent.
Right. I mean, that makes sense to me now that you've explained it. It's just, that's interesting. I mean, fortunately, only 20% are confused on that point, but clearly another area for Sweegen's marketing group to address, right?
Absolutely. A lot of education there to be done.
But in general, again, looking at this study, it seems like most people are comfortable with stevia in general. Although I'm not reading from a bullet point here, I do understand that there's maybe a historical concern about the overall taste of stevia. Could you explain where that's coming from?
Yeah, there's a very specific perception for the vast majority of the people who have tasted stevia before. And the product itself has a very specific taste, like I said, like metallic off notes. And that's because the first generation of these sweeteners, of this stevia specifically, comes from a process that wasn't able to extract the best possible tasting glycosides or molecules. So this is because technology back then wasn't that advanced as we are now. And we basically know that because our differentiation comes from stevia that tastes a lot better than the one you're mentioning.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but if I had to summarize, you would basically say that the sweet tasting molecules that we're getting out of the stevia leaf today are just the better tasting one. I understand there's many of these sweet tasting molecules, and the stevia leaf has a preponderance of the ones that don't taste good naturally. But with our technology, with Sweegen's technology, we're able to make ones that taste better. That's essentially it, right?
That's correct. The leaf has many different type of sweet stuff in there. So technology was only able to extract some of those, and those are the ones that taste bad. Whereas the process today is much better, and we're able to have the ones that are less present on the leaf, but the ones that taste better.
Right. And so taste better means a lot of different things. Less aftertaste, maybe a certain intensity of sweetness. Are there any other things that people need to think about when they're coming to your innovation studio to make a new sugar-reduced beverage?
Oh, there is a huge difference. It's not only the type of sweetness, but it's cleaner. Okay. The curves could be more similar to sugar. Sometimes the customers don't believe that we are giving them a sample with stevia. Actually, we let them try first and tell them, try to guess what is it that you're trying. Some of them say sugar, some of them say other stuff, which is, I don't know what it is, but they don't mention stevia at all. So it's really surprising when they hear about this new generation of stevia.
So going back to your study again, just for a moment, there's a bulletin here that says 30% of consumers feel that there are not enough sugar-reduced products available on the market. 30%, I think for Sweegen you would wish that was higher, but that's still a respectable amount. I don't know if that automatically means that 60% feel that there are enough sugar-reduced products available on the market, but where does Sweegen see its opportunity from that fact?
Well, it's good to know that this percentage of people still think that there are not many options out there yet. So we would take that percentage. Of course, we would like to be higher, but there's a good chance for us to help the customers bring these healthier options. Because even this 30-something percent, that's a very considerable number. For the amount of products out there in different categories, we are certain that there are still not enough options, and for us, a very good opportunity to develop.
Yeah, later on, there's a highlight here that says, regardless of how many options there are in the market, 72% of respondents are looking for products with less sugar. And 65% of the respondents considered food and beverage with stevia to be good for them. So that sounds like great news.
It sounds very promising, especially the ones that mentioned that they would be open to try sugar-reduced or less sugar options, because many different categories open for opportunity.
And then as a last bullet that I'll throw out here, 71% of those surveyed accepted stevia over artificial sweeteners. And again, I think this speaks to the confusion about the labeling and the way all the sweeteners are lumped together. Perhaps if there was a way for them to distinguish the artificial from the natural ones like stevia, that 71% would be more satisfied.
Absolutely. And for the ones that know that stevia is natural, so that's also a good opportunity for our customers to develop these products for those consumers willing to try natural options.
All right, so I want to change tact here a little bit, change gears a little bit, and just maybe you could tell me a little bit more about the differences between Mexico and the rest of the world as it pertains to this particular issue. Are there certain customer profiles that you encounter in Mexico when it comes to sweeteners that maybe you don't see in other parts of the world? Are there people that are more accepting of those flavors or less discriminating, more discriminating? What's your opinion?
Absolutely, and very interesting topic you raise, Casey. We do have a lot of differences in Mexico versus the rest of the world, even in Latin America, where we speak Spanish. Mexico, here we have been able to taste sweet since a very young age. Our sweets are very, very sweet.
Yeah.
We've been exposed to, like I said at the beginning, celebrations that include indulgent products. I would say we have one of the highest sweet tooth all over. Our yogurts have sugar in the white mass, also in the fruit prep. Soft drinks are very high. We have actually requests from different customers to develop very, very sweet products. So we see it every day. Also because the availability of fruits out there in the market is high. So yeah, we are very used to this sweet flavor. In some soft drinks, for example, we have the biggest per capita consumption in the world. I wasn't aware of this number specifically, but Chiapas, which is a southeastern state in Mexico, the number goes as high as 9 glasses of soft drinks.
Oh, wow. That is high, yes.
So, the US is higher than the worldwide per capita consumption. Mexico is also very high. So if I give you numbers, worldwide would be 100 glasses of soft drinks per day. In the US, say 400 glasses per year. 100 glasses of soft drinks per year. The USA, 400 glasses per year. Mexico, as a country, 600 glasses per year. And Chiapas, more than 3,000 glasses of soft drinks per year. So
wow, that's incredible. Yeah, that's a lot of sugar going down. Wow. So based on that, I actually have heard that Mexico is that way. It has a strong preference for sugar. There's a lot of sugar consumption there. And the Mexican government obviously is trying to address that problem, again, with some of the labels that we've talked about. Would you consider Mexico to be a leader or an influencer of other Latin American Spanish-speaking countries in that regard?
I would rather say that Mexico is following some guidelines.
Okay.
First countries in Latin America to do these labeling regulations were Chile, which is the most advanced one, even with some solutions for replacing sugar on the table. Ecuador is also very much advanced. Most recently, Colombia. But I would say Mexico is kind of in the middle of this regulation. Canada is coming soon to adopt the regulation. Argentina just did recently. And Brazil is also coming up with the same labeling. Okay.
Yeah, so it is something that's, I guess, spreading regardless of whether Mexico is the leader or somewhere in the middle of the pack. It sounds like it's recognized. And it also brings up another question for me. I know that Sweegen has these innovation studios in several parts of the world, and I think that's because people have different preferences for the way things taste. As you said, the profile of consumption of sugars in Mexico is different than it is in other parts of the world, and so the way that they might purchase their products could be different depending on their preferences. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about how the Latin American palate is either broadly represented by the Mexican palate or not, and how it might compare to other parts of the world in that regard as well.
Well, being the sweetest tooth in the region, I would also guess we are on the top sweetest ones. It does have an influence, also because a lot of global companies have operations here, so they need to adapt as of how the Mexican consumer is willing to have the products in terms of sweet level. I would say there's also a little bit of influence in other regions in Latin America where products can be copied or, for example, Brazil also has a sweet profile, not as sweet as ours. Argentina, not as sweet as ours. So I would say Brazil and Mexico are very similar in that sense.
Okay, that's interesting too. And Brazil, of course, is a huge country with a large customer base. So it's not just governments that are concerned about the health of their citizens and reducing sugar. It's also a lot of the companies themselves that are selling these particular products. And I know that these companies have these internal sugar reduction mandates that they need to meet by a certain period of time. How is Sweegen helping these companies with their sugar reduction?
Well, having a partner like us, like Sweegen, would help them to consumers see that they care about them. Having an option of a healthier product or a less sugar product would actually help them have a good image in the market.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really important. Well, thanks so much, Sergio, for coming on this podcast. I have one more question, I guess, for our parting thoughts here. Just could you paint us a picture of what the future might look like, where natural sweeteners like stevia are really the way to go?
Well, absolutely, Casey, and glad that you mentioned this because there is still a long way to go with our solutions and the companies being able to develop. But there is a very interesting market to guide the efforts. I would say that companies can start developing alternative options for their products, and eventually some part of the market will adopt these new versions, healthier versions. I would say the new generations are very much aware of their health and wellness in general. So I think that will also push for some initiatives for us to help the market and be healthier.
All right, well, we're coming to the end of our podcast, Sergio, and I really just wanted to ask you, what does the future look like for natural sweeteners, not only in Latin America, but globally?
Well, I would say, Casey, it does look very promising, On one hand, we have all the things that the government in Mexico and many other countries following the labeling regulation and taking care of the consumer. It's helping for having more guided decisions and purchasing decisions. Evidently, there's still a long way to go because we also know that companies are doing a lot of efforts trying to develop something healthier. And eventually we'll get there. If they ban the artificials at some point or the scientific evidence helps take a decision, this will also lead to new developments on their natural halo arena. So I would say also generations are trying to be healthier and have better for you products in front of them. So I think that's also promising. And until then, I would suggest that our customers and companies to approach to us. We can certainly help you with gaining some time before everything comes into place. By then, you should be able to have healthier options with less sugars, less calories, and most importantly, a benefit for the consumer.
Healthier, better tasting products. Who couldn't be in favor of that? Any closing thoughts you'd like to deliver to our audience before we finish the podcast?
Absolutely, Casey. First of all, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you and your audience. Also invite you to our innovation studio, you and whoever wants to be here. I can assure you it's going to be a very fun time, and you will be able to taste amazing things, very healthy, very tasty, indulgent, and available for you to come anytime you want.
Fantastic. I can't wait to go. I love going to Mexico. So thanks again to our guest, Sergio Borbolla, Director of Business Development for Sweegen Latin America. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to learn more, visit our website at forgingbio.com, where you can listen to every episode and connect with our guests. Together, we're forging the future of biotechnology.